Hyunwoo stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council and felt very small. The room was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Strange beings floated, slithered, and glowed around him. Some looked like living crystals that sang when they moved. Others were clouds of gas that spoke through machines. The plant-like ones swayed even though there was no wind. He was the first human to ever stand in this place. Earth had just joined the galaxy's big family of worlds only 2 years ago. Most of the other beings here were thousands of years old. Their people had been traveling between stars since before humans learned to make fire. "The outer worlds are lost," said a voice that sounded like breaking glass. It came from one of the crystal beings called Veltari. "We must accept this fact." Hyunwoo stepped forward. His boots made loud sounds on the smooth floor. "We cannot just give up on them. There are billions of people out there." A cloud of purple gas swirled near him. When it spoke, the voice was like wind through leaves. "Young human, you do not understand. The void swarm cannot be stopped. It has taken 12 star systems in 3 cycles. Every ship we send never comes back. The void swarm." Hyunwoo had read all the reports. Strange creatures that ate everything in their path. They turned whole planets into empty rocks. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just consumed and moved on to the next world. "But we have to try," Hyunwoo said. "My people, we don't give up easily." The plant-like beings made a sound like rustling leaves. It was their way of laughing. "Your people are babies in the galaxy, human. You know nothing of real war." Far away from the council hall, Captain So-jin stood on the bridge of her ship. The Earth defense vessel Taguk moved slowly through space near the edge of human territory. Her crew was watching the long-range sensors with worried faces. "Captain, we're getting more signals," said her communications officer. "They're very weak." "From the Kepler sector." So-jin looked at the star map. The Kepler sector was supposed to be empty now. The Galactic Council had told everyone to leave 3 months ago. But the signals meant someone was still out there. "What kind of signals?" she asked. "Distress calls. Automated systems. Some of them are not from any species we know," so Jin felt cold. The void swarm had reached Kepler. The Council said it would take them at least a year to get that far. They were moving faster than anyone thought. "Any word from the Council?" she asked. Her first officer shook his head. "The elder races are still talking. They say they need more time to plan." So Jin wanted to scream. While the old aliens talked and planned, people were dying. Real people with families and dreams. But the humans were new here. They had to follow the rules. On the research ship Jung, Dr. Minho was looking at something that made his stomach turn. The small probe had come back from the edge of Kepler sector. It carried samples that should not exist. Run the scan again, he told his computer. The results were the same. The organic matter showed signs of forced evolution. Something had taken living tissue and changed it in ways that should be impossible. The DNA was scrambled and rebuilt. What came back was alive, but it was not what it used to be. Minho had been studying alien life for 5 years. He thought he had seen everything, but this was different. This was not natural evolution. This was corruption. He touched his communication device. "Captain So-jin, this is Dr. Minho. You need to see this." The screen in So-jin's ship lit up with Minho's face. He looked pale and worried. "Captain, the samples from the probe are showing something terrible. The void swarm is not just eating things. It's changing them, making them part of itself." So Jin felt her blood turn cold. "What do you mean?" "The tissue samples show traces of 12 different species, but they're all connected now. All part of one big organism. The swarm is not just a group of creatures. It's one giant mind made from all the things it has eaten." Back in the council hall, Hyunwoo was getting angry. He had been listening to the aliens talk for 6 hours. They spoke about acceptable losses and strategic retreats. They made charts and graphs about how much of the galaxy they could lose and still survive. "What about the people?" he finally shouted. "What about the families? The children?" The crystal being made its glass-breaking sound again. "You speak of emotion, human. We speak of logic. To save the many, we must sacrifice the few." "How many?" Hyunwoo asked. "How many star systems will you give up? How many billion lives?" A floating jellyfish-like creature pulsed with blue light. "The outer rim contains 47 inhabited systems. If we establish a defense line at the middle worlds, we can save the core systems. That is where 90% of galactic civilization lives." Hyunwoo could not believe what he was hearing. "So you'll just let 47 worlds die?" "It is the logical choice," said the gas cloud. "Your species will learn to think this way in time. When you are older and wiser, Hyunwoo thought about Earth, about the wars his people had fought, about the times they had stood together against impossible odds. Humans did not think like this. They did not give up on people just because saving them was hard. My people have a saying, he told the council. We leave no one behind. The plant beings rustled again. Primitive thinking. This is why your species is not ready for leadership roles. On her ship, Sojin made a decision that would change everything. She looked at her crew. These were good people. They had families back on Earth. They had signed up to protect human worlds, not to die in alien space. But people were calling for help. And no one else was answering. Set course for the Kepler sector, she ordered. Her first officer looked shocked. Captain, the council has forbidden any ships from entering that area. The council can court-martial me later, Sojin said. Right now people need help. The Taeguk turned and headed toward the danger zone. Behind them, more human ships began to follow. Word was spreading through the human fleet. Someone was finally going to help. Hyunwoo felt his communication device buzz. It was a message from the human fleet command. Captain Sojin and 12 other ships had broken away from the main fleet. They were heading into council-forbidden space. He smiled for the first time in days. This was what humans did. When everyone else said no, they said yes. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to deal with people from a death world. The Galactic Council's emergency session lasted 3 days. When it ended, they made their decision. The Outer Rim was now called the Dead Zone. No ships could go there. No rescue missions. No military help. The council put up energy barriers around the whole area to keep the Void Swarm inside. Commander Ji-hoon read the official order on his ship's screen. His small task force of 5 human vessels was hiding behind a dead moon just outside the barrier. The order was clear. Any ship that crossed into the dead zone would be considered lost. The council would not send help. Commander, we're getting signals from inside the barrier, his communications officer reported. Lots of them. People are still alive in there. Ji-hoon looked at the barrier. It was like a wall of energy that stretched across space. The council ships patrolled it day and night. But they only watched. They did not help. How many signals? He asked. At least 30 different sources. Some are automated distress beacons. Others are live transmissions. Commander, there are children calling for their parents. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old and loved to draw pictures of spaceships. What would he do if she was trapped behind that barrier? Plot a course through the barrier, he ordered. His crew looked shocked. Sir, that's against direct orders from the council. The council can go to hell, Ji-hoon said. We're human. We help people. The 5 human ships moved toward the barrier. The council patrol ships noticed them right away. Warning messages filled the communication channels. Human vessels, you are ordered to stop. Do not cross the barrier, Ji-hoon ignored them. His ships pushed through the energy wall and entered the dead zone. On the other side, everything was different. Space itself looked sick. Stars flickered with wrong colors. Planets that should have been blue and green were now gray and black. The Void Swarm had been busy. Sensors are picking up debris fields, his navigator reported. Looks like there was a big battle here. They found the first survivors on a small research station. Only 12 people were left out of 300. They were hiding in the power core room, the only place the swarm creatures could not reach. We thought no one was coming, the station chief said when they beamed him aboard. He was a Veltari crystal being, but his light was very dim. The council told us to evacuate, but our ships were too slow. We're here now, Ji-hoon said. How long before the swarm finds this place? Maybe 2 days. They move in patterns. But Commander, you don't understand what you're fighting. These creatures, they learn from everything they eat. They're getting smarter. Engineer Hyejin was working in the ship's weapon room when they brought the survivors aboard. She had been designing new weapons since they entered the dead zone. The normal galactic weapons did not work well against the swarm. They were too clean, too precise. The aliens always try to disable their enemies, she told her assistant. They want to capture and study. But the swarm can't be captured. It has to be destroyed completely. She was building bombs that would burn everything in a wide area. Dirty weapons that the council would never approve. But the council was not here. Engineer Hyejin, the ship's computer announced. We have incoming swarm scouts. Yijin ran to the bridge. On the main screen, she could see them. They looked like metal insects the size of cars. But as she watched, they started to change shape. They were adapting to fight human ships. "Fire everything," Ji-hoon ordered. The council weapons barely scratched the scouts, but Hee-jin's new bombs worked differently. They exploded in waves of fire that kept burning. The scouts tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. The fire just consumed them. "It worked," Hee-jin said with surprise. "But Commander, look at the sensor readings." The destroyed scouts had sent out a signal before they died. Now something much bigger was coming toward them. "Multiple contacts," the sensor officer reported. "Big ones. They're moving fast." On the screen, Ji-hoon could see the main swarm force. Ships made from the bones of dead worlds, creatures the size of cities. And in the middle, something that hurt to look at, a mass of twisted flesh and metal that pulsed like a heartbeat. "That's a swarm node," the crystal survivor said. "It controls all the smaller creatures." "But Commander, no one has ever destroyed a node. They're too smart, too strong." Ji-hoon smiled. It was not a nice smile. They haven't fought humans before. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The council races fought with careful precision. They used minimum force and tried to avoid damage to infrastructure. Humans fought like their home planet had taught them, with fury and desperation. Hee-jin's weapons tore through swarm ships like paper, but for every one they destroyed, 2 more appeared. The enemy was learning from each attack, getting stronger. "We can't win this fight," his first officer said. "We don't have to win," Ji-hoon replied. "We just have to save people." He sent 3 of his ships to evacuate more survivors while 2 ships kept fighting. It was a desperate plan, but it worked. They saved 800 people from 3 different stations, but the cost was heavy. 2 human ships were lost. Good people died so that others could live. The survivors could not understand it. "Why did you come?" a plant-like alien asked. "Your people barely know us." "We are not your responsibility." "Everyone is our responsibility," Ji-hoon said. "That's what makes us human." As they escaped the dead zone, Ji-hoon sent a message to Dr. Minho on the research ship. "Doctor, you need to study the swarm samples we collected. We learned something important." "What did you learn?" Minho asked. "The swarm is not just eating people. It's using their memories, their knowledge. Every species it consumes makes it smarter about fighting that species." Minho felt cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's been studying humans, learning how we fight, and now it knows we're the only ones fighting back." The implications were terrible. The swarm had consumed dozens of species. It knew how each one thought, how they fought, how they could be defeated. But now it was focused on humans. "Commander, there's something else," Minho said. "I've been analyzing the signals from the dead zone. The swarm is not moving randomly anymore. It's heading toward human space." Ji-hoon looked at the star map. The swarm's path was clear. It was coming for Earth. Back at the council hall, news of the human mission caused chaos. The alien leaders were angry and scared. Angry that humans had disobeyed direct orders. Scared because now the swarm knew about Earth. "You have doomed us all," the gas cloud being told Hyunwoo. "The swarm will follow your ships. It will learn about your world." "Good," Hyunwoo said. "Let it come. My people are ready." "You are fools," the crystal being sang. "Your world will be consumed like all the others." Hyunwoo thought about his home. About the billions of humans who had never seen an alien ship. They had no idea what was coming for them. But he also thought about human history. About all the times his people had faced impossible odds. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. The Void Swarm thought it knew humans because it had eaten a few hundred of them. But it had no idea what 7 billion angry humans could do when their home was threatened. "Let them come," Hyunwoo said again. "They're about to learn why Earth is called a death world." The trial of humanity began at dawn on the council world. Hyunwoo stood in a cage made of energy while alien judges floated around him. The charges were serious: violation of council law, reckless endangerment, and primitive aggression. "The human species has shown it cannot be trusted with galactic citizenship," announced the chief judge, a being that looked like a floating brain in a jar. "They have endangered all civilized worlds with their violent actions." Hyunwoo looked up at the judges. "We saved 800 lives. How is that a crime?" "You violated the quarantine," the brain judge replied. "You attracted the Void Swarm's attention to inhabited worlds. Your reckless actions have consequences." Around the courtroom, representatives from dozens of alien species watched. Some looked angry. Others seemed afraid. A few appeared curious, as if humans were strange animals in a zoo. The defense may present its case, the judge said. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. Your honors, my people come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We had to fight for everything, food, shelter, safety. We learned that when someone needs help, you help them. You don't calculate the cost first. A crystal being in the jury box sang a note of disapproval. Primitive emotional thinking. Civilized species use logic. Maybe that's the problem, Hyunwoo said. You've been logical for so long you forgot how to fight. Far from the courtroom, Dr. Minho was making a discovery that would change everything. In his laboratory on the research ship, he had been studying void swarm tissue for weeks. What he found made his hands shake. Captain Sojin, you need to see this immediately, he called through the ship's communication system. Sojin arrived in the lab within minutes. What did you find, Doctor? Minho pointed to the screen showing genetic analysis. The void swarm isn't a natural species. It was created by who? The Veltari, about 50,000 years ago. Sojin stared at the data. That's impossible. The Crystal people are the oldest members of the Council. They're peaceful. They are now, Minho said. But 50,000 years ago, they were fighting a war against something called the Chaos Entities. Species that thrived on conflict and disorder. The Veltari created the swarm to bring perfect peace to the galaxy. How do you create peace with a weapon like that? Minho's face was grim. By removing the ability to feel negative emotions. The swarm was supposed to connect all minds into one peaceful collective. No more war, no more hate, no more fear. Sojin understood immediately. But without those emotions, you also lose the ability to fight. To protect yourself, exactly. The experiment worked too well. The collective mind became passive and parasitic. It could only survive by consuming others. The Veltari lost control of their creation and had to hide from it. Does the Council know? The older species know. That's why they won't fight it directly. They're terrified of what they created. Across the galaxy, pilot Tae-young was learning the same lesson in a different way. Her ship was part of a joint evacuation fleet, trying to save civilians from a world called New Harmony. The planet had 2 billion inhabitants and only 6 hours before the swarm arrived. Human pilot, you are flying too aggressively, complained her Veltari co-pilot through the crystal communication device. The passengers are frightened. Tae-young looked at her passenger manifest. 300 terrified aliens from 12 different species. Children crying for their parents. Elderly beings who had never seen war. They should be frightened, she said. Fear keeps you alive. Her co-pilot's light dimmed. Fear is inefficient. Panic causes poor decisions. Sometimes poor decisions are the only ones that work, Tae-young replied. She pushed her ship harder than any alien pilot would dare. The engine screamed in protest, but they made it to the evacuation zone in half the expected time. Around them, other ships moved with careful precision, following safety protocols even as death approached. Human pilot, her co-pilot said. Your flying violates 17 safety regulations. My flying gets results, Tae-young said. Your regulations get people killed. As they loaded refugees, Tae-young watched the alien evacuation crews work. They moved slowly and carefully. Each refugee was processed through proper channels. Forms were filled out. Health checks were completed. It was all very organized and very slow. The human crews worked differently. They grabbed anyone they could fit and worried about paperwork later. It was chaotic and dangerous, but it was fast. You cannot save everyone, the Veltari told her. Logic says to save those most likely to survive. Logic can kiss my ass, Tae-young said. We save everyone we can reach. When the swarm scouts appeared on the edge of the system, the alien ships began their retreat. They had saved 60% of the population. By their calculations, that was an acceptable success rate. The human ships stayed longer. They saved another 10,000 people before they had to run. It wasn't much, but to those 10,000 families, it was everything. Back on the Council world, Hyunwoo was presenting his defense when Dr. Min-ho's report arrived. The courtroom fell silent as the truth about the Void Swarm's origin was revealed. You created this monster, Hyunwoo said to the Veltari judges. You made something that removes the ability to fight, and now you're surprised that peaceful species can't stop it? The crystal being's light flickered with what might have been shame. That was long ago. We have evolved beyond such crude solutions. You've evolved beyond the ability to protect yourselves, Hyunwoo replied. You made the perfect peaceful society, but you forgot that sometimes peace has to be defended with violence. The brain judge pulsed with angry colors. Your species glorifies violence. You are dangerous. Damn right we're dangerous, Hyunwoo said. That's why we're the only ones fighting your mistake. He turned to address the entire courtroom. You call Earth a death world because it's harsh. Because it created a species that knows how to fight and kill and die for what matters. You think that makes us primitive? The alien audience listened in uncomfortable silence. But here's what you don't understand. Hyunwoo continued. We didn't just learn to fight. We learned when to fight. We learned what's worth dying for. And right now, innocent people are worth dying for. A plant-like alien in the jury swayed nervously. But the cost, human. The lives lost in battle. How do you justify such waste? Hyunwoo thought about Commander Ji-hoon and the ships that didn't come back. Good people who died saving strangers. We don't justify it. We mourn it. But we do it anyway because the alternative is worse. The alternative is logical retreat, the brain judge said. Preserve resources for future battles. The alternative is letting the swarm eat the galaxy one world at a time while you calculate acceptable losses, Hyunwoo shot back. Your logic created this problem. Maybe it's time to try something else. The trial was interrupted by an emergency broadcast. The void swarm had broken through the outer barriers. It was moving toward the core worlds faster than anyone expected. The safe logical defenses were failing. In the chaos that followed, Hyunwoo heard something that chilled him. The swarm wasn't just moving randomly anymore. It was targeting specific worlds, worlds with human colonies or human allies. The monster had learned to hate, and it hated humans most of all. As alarms wailed through the council chamber, Hyunwoo made a request that shocked everyone present. Give me command of the human fleet, he said. All of it. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. Impossible, the brain judge replied. Humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable. Exactly, Hyunwoo said. You need someone unpredictable to fight something that learns from predictable tactics. He looked around the chamber at all the alien species that had judged his people. You want to see what Deathworlders can really do? Give us the tools and we'll show you. The vote was close, but fear won over prejudice. For the first time in galactic history, a human would command the combined fleet. Hyunwoo smiled grimly. The galaxy was about to learn why predators make the best protectors. General Dongmin arrived at the council world with 200 human warships. They were ugly compared to alien vessels. No smooth curves or elegant designs, just armor, weapons, and engines. Ships built for one purpose, war. The alien fleet commanders gathered to meet him were nervous. They had never seen so many weapons in one place. Human ships carried enough firepower to crack planets. General, said a Veltari admiral, its crystal body flickering with worried light. Your ships are excessive. Why do you need so many weapons? Dongmin was a big man with scars on his hands and a voice like thunder. Because we're going to war, not to a debate club. But surely precision strikes would be more efficient, suggested a gas cloud admiral. Target specific swarm nodes with minimal collateral damage. Efficiency doesn't win wars, Dongmin replied. Overwhelming force wins wars. The swarm has been fighting your efficient fleets for 3 years. How's that working out? The alien admirals had no answer. Their careful, precise attacks had only slowed the swarm down. Every battle was a strategic retreat. Every victory was temporary. The human approach is too crude, complained a plant-like commander. You'll destroy everything, not just the enemy. Good, Dongmin said. Better a dead system than one feeding the swarm. Dr. Yujin watched the meeting from the corner of the room. She was a military psychologist who had spent months studying alien survivors. What she had learned was disturbing. After the meeting, she approached General Dongmin. Sir, I need to brief you on the psychological profiles. What did you find, Doctor? The alien species have evolved beyond the capacity for desperate courage. They can think, plan, and calculate, but they cannot function under extreme stress. When faced with certain death, they freeze. Dongmin nodded grimly. And the swarm? It feeds on that paralysis. The more afraid a species becomes, the easier it is to consume. But humans are different. We get angry when we're scared. We fight harder when the odds are bad. That's why they need us. That's why they fear us, sir. To them, our courage looks like madness. The first major battle came at the Kepler Gate, a strategic jump point that controlled access to 12 core systems. The swarm had built a massive fortress there using the bones of dead ships and the twisted remains of consumed worlds. The combined fleet approached the fortress carefully. Alien admirals wanted to study it first, to understand its weaknesses before attacking. Analysis will take 6 hours, reported the Veltari admiral. Then we can plan a proper assault. In 6 hours, the swarm will have reinforced their position, Dongmin replied. We attack now. But General, we don't understand their defenses. Then we'll learn by fighting them. Dongmin gave the order that shocked every alien in the fleet. All ships full attack. Ram anything that gets in your way. The human ships charged the fortress like ancient warriors running into battle. No careful formations. No elegant maneuvers. Just raw aggression and firepower. The aliens watched in horror as human ships deliberately crashed into swarm defenders. Crews sacrificed themselves to clear paths for other ships. It was insane by galactic standards, but it worked. The swarm had never faced an enemy willing to trade ships for tactical advantage. Its collective mind couldn't understand the concept of acceptable losses for strategic gain. It hesitated for crucial seconds, trying to process human tactics. Those seconds were enough. Human bombers reached the fortress core and detonated charges that engineer Hyjin had designed specifically for this moment. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. Fortress destroyed, reported the fleet scanner operator. Swarm forces in full retreat. The alien admirals stared at their screens in disbelief. How did you know that would work? We didn't, Dongmin admitted. But doing something unpredictable was better than doing nothing predictable. After the battle, Dr. Yujin interviewed the surviving alien crew members. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Commander, she told a plant-like officer who had served on a human ship. How did you feel during the attack? The aliens' leaves rustled with remembered trauma. Terrified, your people charged into certain death with smiles on their faces. It was horrifying, but we won. Yes, but at what cost? 37 human ships were destroyed. Over 2,000 of your people died. And how many people did we save by taking that fortress? The plant being was silent for a long moment. 12 billion in the core systems. Then it was worth it. That's what I don't understand, the alien said. How can you value strangers' lives more than your own survival? Dr. Yujin had heard this question many times. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up for others, who will stand up for us? The victories continued. Human fleets struck swarm positions with tactics that made alien observers sick. Kamikaze runs against swarm nodes, ships that fought until they exploded, crews that stayed at their posts even as the hull broke apart around them. Each battle saved thousands of lives. Each victory cost dozens of human ships. The other species began to understand what they were. Witnessing, a people who had turned self-sacrifice into an art form. They're insane, a gas cloud admiral told his staff after watching humans destroy a swarm breeding facility. Completely insane. But effective, his aide replied. They've accomplished more in 2 months than we did in 3 years. General Dongmin knew the cost was high. Every night he read the names of the dead. Good people who would never see their families again. But he also read the reports of worlds saved. Cities evacuated. Children who would grow up free because someone else paid the price. The swarm was adapting, though. It was learning human tactics and developing counters. Worse, it was beginning to target human emotions specifically. It sent signals designed to cause fear and despair. It showed captured humans being slowly consumed, trying to break human morale. It's learning to fight us psychologically, Dr. Yujin reported. It understands that our emotions are both our strength and our weakness. What do you recommend, Doctor? And we need to end this quickly. The longer the war lasts, the better the swarm gets at fighting humans specifically. Dongmin studied the tactical displays. The swarm was retreating toward the galactic core, but it was getting stronger. Soon it would be too powerful for even human tactics to stop. How long do we have? Maybe 2 months before it reaches critical mass. After that, nothing we do will matter. Dongmin made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Then we take the fight to its source. We find the primary hive and destroy it. Sir, that's suicide. The primary hive is defended by the combined mass of everything the swarm has consumed. We'd need to sacrifice the entire fleet. Then that's what we do. Dr. Yujin stared at him. General, you're talking about sending every human ship to certain death, and I'm talking about ending this war before it spreads to Earth? Before it consumes every world in the galaxy. There has to be another way. Dongmin looked out at the stars where human ships patrolled. Young men and women who had volunteered to fight an enemy they barely understood, to protect people they had never met. Doctor, what makes someone willing to die for strangers? Eugen thought about all the interviews she had conducted, all the human crews who had charged into impossible odds. Love, sir? Love for something bigger than themselves. Then we have something the swarm will never understand, and maybe that's enough. The order went out to every human ship in the galaxy. Prepare for the final battle. No one was coming home. The primary hive hung in space like a cancer. It was the size of a moon, built from the consumed remains of 1,000 worlds. Twisted metal and flesh formed impossible structures that hurt to look at. This was where the Void Swarm had started. This was where it would end. Captain Sojin stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the thing that had to die. Around her, the entire human fleet waited. 300 ships, 50,000 crew members. Everyone knew this was a one-way trip. Final tactical report, she called out. Her sensor officer's voice was steady despite the circumstances. Hive is surrounded by defensive nodes. Each one controls about 50 smaller ships. The core structure shows massive energy readings. It's powered by the life force of everything it's consumed. Estimated casualties for a direct assault? 100%, Captain, nothing will survive. Sojin nodded. She had expected that answer. Time to target? 4 hours at maximum burn. Behind the human fleet, the alien ships waited at a safe distance. They would record the battle and retreat when it was over. Their job was to survive and rebuild. The human job was to die. All ships, this is Captain Sojin, she announced on the fleet-wide channel. In 4 hours we're going to destroy that thing. None of us are coming home. But our families will be safe. Our worlds will be free. And the galaxy will remember what humans do when everything depends on us. Across the fleet, crew members made their final preparations. Some wrote letters they would never send. Others just stared at pictures of home. A few sang old songs from Earth, voices carrying across the communication channels. Commander Ji-hoon was aboard the assault ship Incheon. His job was to lead the boarding parties that would fight their way to the hive core. He looked at his soldiers, young men and women who should have been starting families or exploring the galaxy. Anyone wants to transfer to a support ship, now's the time, he told them. Nobody moved. Good, he said. Let's go save the galaxy. Engineer Hyojin was in the weapon control room of her ship, making final adjustments to the bombs that would crack the hive core. She had designed them to feed on the swarm's own energy, turning its power against itself. Will it work? Her assistant asked. Probably, Hyojin said. The theory is sound, but we'll need to get close enough to plant them manually. How close? Close enough to touch the core? Close enough to die? Her assistant was quiet for a moment. My family is on New Sol. If we don't stop this thing here, then everyone dies anyway, Hyojin finished. At least this way someone remembers us. Dr. Minho was aboard the command ship, monitoring the swarm's responses. The collective mind was excited. It had never faced such a large concentration of humans before. It was looking forward to consuming their knowledge and emotions. Captain, he reported, the swarm is pulling back its outer defenses. It wants us to reach the core. It's a trap? Of course. But it doesn't matter. We're not trying to escape. Pilot Tae-young was flying the fastest ship in the fleet. Her job was to punch through the defenses and create a path for the assault teams. She had volunteers for gunners, but no co-pilot. She flew alone. Target acquired, she announced as the hive grew larger on her screen. Beginning attack run. The swarm responded immediately. Thousands of ships swarmed toward the human fleet like angry insects. They moved in perfect coordination, their collective mind controlling every movement. But the humans had stopped trying to be coordinated. Each ship fought its own battle, following instincts instead of plans. The chaos confused the swarm's collective intelligence. All ships, free attack pattern, General Dongmin ordered from his command ship. Fight like humans, not like machines. The battle became a hurricane of destruction. Human ships threw themselves at swarm defenders with wild courage. They rammed enemies, exploded themselves to clear paths, and fought until their hulls melted around them. Tae-young's ship screamed through the defensive perimeter, her guns blazing. She took hits that should have destroyed her, but kept flying through pure determination. Behind her, the assault ships followed the path she had burned through the enemy. "Path is clear," she announced. "Assault teams, go, go, go." Ji-hoon's ship smashed into the hive's surface like a spear. His soldiers poured out, fighting their way through corridors made of living metal and consumed flesh. The swarm defenders were waiting, but they had never fought anyone like humans. "Move! Move! Move!" Ji-hoon shouted as his team advanced. They had minutes before the hive's defenses sealed the breach. Every second counted. The corridors tried to close around them. Walls became weapons. The floor tried to consume their feet. But the humans kept fighting, burning their way deeper into the nightmare structure. Hyojin's ship reached the hive core just as the defenses began to overwhelm them. The core was a pulsing mass of energy and twisted flesh, beautiful and horrible at the same time. "Bombs are armed," she reported. "I need 60 seconds to set the detonation sequence." "You've got 30. Ji-hoon's voice crackled through the communication channel. "We're about to be overrun." Hyojin worked faster than she ever had before. Her fingers flew over the controls, setting charges that would chain react through the hive's power core. Around her, the ship was falling apart as swarm creatures tore through the hull. 20 seconds, Ji-hoon called out. "Almost got it," Hyojin replied. The bomb was ready, but someone had to stay to make sure it detonated properly. Someone had to die. "I'll stay," her assistant volunteered. "No," Hyojin said. "This is my design, my responsibility." She locked the control room door and activated the manual detonation sequence. Through the window, she could see her assistant trying to break back in. She smiled and gave him a thumbs up. "Tell my parents I did good work," she said over the communication channel. The explosion started small, but it grew as it fed on the hive's own power. The chain reaction spread through the massive structure, turning the swarm's strength against itself. Across the fleet, human crews watched as the primary hive began to collapse. But the cost was terrible. Ship after ship went silent as the swarm made its final, desperate attacks. General Dongmin stood on his bridge as swarm creatures broke through the hull. His ship was dying, but the hive was dying faster. "This is General Dongmin to all surviving ships," he announced. "The hive is collapsing. Mission accomplished. It's been an honor serving with you." Dr. Yujin was aboard one of the last ships to be overrun. As swarm creatures swarmed toward her, she made one final report. Psychological analysis complete. The swarm cannot understand sacrifice. It cannot comprehend love that puts others first. That's why we won. Captain So-jin watched from her flagship as the primary hive finally died. The massive structure collapsed in on itself, taking with it the collective consciousness that had terrorized the galaxy. But the human fleet was gone. Every ship, every crew, 50,000 people who would never see home again. In the silence that followed, Ambassador Hyun-woo's voice came over the emergency channel. He was aboard the last evacuation ship, far from the battle. "This is Ambassador Hyun-woo to any surviving forces. The swarm's collective consciousness has been destroyed. Remaining swarm creatures are reverting to basic animal behavior. The threat is over." He paused, looking at the empty space where the human fleet had been. "To anyone listening to this recording in the future, remember this. 50,000 humans died today so that trillions of others could live. They came from a world that taught them to fight, and they died fighting for people they barely knew. The galaxy called us primitive. They said we were too violent, too aggressive, too emotional. Maybe they were right. But when the civilized species couldn't save themselves, the primitives did it for them. Remember their names. Remember their sacrifice. And remember that sometimes the only way to save what you love is to be willing to lose everything for it." The recording ended. In the years that followed, memorials were built on every world in the galaxy. Not monuments to war, but reminders of what courage looked like when everything depended on it. The elder races learned to fight again. They developed new military doctrines based on human tactics. They trained their children to be brave instead of just smart. And on Earth, in schools and homes across the world, children learned about the day when humanity stood alone against the dark. When 50,000 volunteers decided that some things were worth dying for, the galaxy was safe. The price had been paid. And everyone remembered who paid it. The Deathworlders had done what they did best. They protected those who could not protect themselves, no matter the cost. In the end, that was what made them human.